I'm Aaron Gilchrist in Washington, D.C., in for Gadi Schwartz tonight. It is another election night in America, and NBC News can now project Joe Biden will be the Democratic presumptive nominee for president. He has now reached the number of delegates, 1,968. That's according to our decision desk, which made that projection within the last hour. Former President Donald Trump could also clinch the Republican presidential nomination tonight. His magic number is 1,215. Now, polls have now been closed for 1 hour in the key swing state of Georgia and in Mississippi. Primary voters are also casting ballots in Washington state and Hawaii, as well as the Northern Mariana Islands, and Democrats abroad are doing that as well. NBC's Blaine Alexander is in Atlanta for us tonight. So, Blaine, NBC News projecting Joe Biden as the winner of the Georgia primary tonight. That was expected, a convincing win there for the president.
Absolutely expected, Aaron, and a very convincing win, something like 96% of the vote against his two challengers. But, you know, already Georgia Democrats are touting this as a victory. We've seen a statement in the past 30 minutes or so from the chairperson of the Georgia Democratic Party, basically saying that back in 2020, it was Georgia that sent Joe Biden to the White House. And now in 2024, they are proud to basically be the state that put him over the edge to officially clinch the Democratic nomination. Now, while we're paying attention to those numbers, though, from Joe Biden, what I'm also watching is, yes, Donald Trump won this state certainly as well tonight on primary night. But what's interesting is that according to NBC News numbers, he took about 85% of the vote. 15% of that vote went to Nikki Haley. That means she took something like 19,000 Georgia votes today. So very interesting. Of course, when you talk about the margin here in Georgia that you know, Aaron, is very, very slim. Joe Biden carried the state by fewer than 12,000 votes several years ago. That's why when I talk with both Democratic and Republican strategists and get out the vote activists, both of them see an opening when it comes to their candidate winning the Peach State in November. Now, when I talk to Republicans, they say that the key is getting those voters in the suburbs, those people who voted for Nikki Haley. I actually spoke with one Republican, and she told me that in order for Trump to win, he's going to have to recapture those voters who voted for him twice, but after January 6th said they want nothing to do with him and decided to cast a ballot for Haley. Aaron.
And I do want to know for our viewers, Blaine, that we can project. NBC News is now also projecting another race here. I think we can put it up on the screen for folks to see. This is, I believe, the contest in Mississippi. And tell me again, we're projecting that Donald Trump has won Mississippi as well. So I want to get that note in for our viewers. I do want to ask you too, Blaine, about there in Georgia, the protest vote on the Democratic side in the other primaries there in Georgia. I was in Atlanta over the weekend and spoke with one of the state legislators there about this protest vote that was building in that state. This was something that we saw in Michigan, obviously, a few weeks back, a protest vote. Talk to us about what exactly is happening there in Georgia with that as it relates to President Biden.
Yeah, it's something that's gaining steam a lot when it comes to people who are upset with Biden, increasingly upset with Biden, calling for a ceasefire in the Israel-Hamas war. So what we're seeing is that people are going to the polls, but essentially casting blank ballots, trying to send a message that they're not happy with the president and his stance on what's going on. But, you know, I do think that when you talk with Biden advisors, Nikema Williams, for instance, a surrogate for the president and a congresswoman here from Georgia, she makes it clear that they're not necessarily concerned about that. They're not worried about that. What they're focused on is making sure that turnout is what it needs to be in November. They say that they believe that by the time November comes, they're going to drive home the message of getting people out to the ballot. But again, Aaron, 11,779 votes is not a large number. And so when you talk about the possibility of some voters going over to Trump, some voters casting protest ballots, certainly Democrats need every vote that they can get if they hope to keep the state blue in November.
All right, Blaine Alexander for us in Atlanta tonight. Blaine, thank you. Appreciate it. Now, while President Biden is trying to own the narrative around his age as the election heats up, it's also center stage today during a fiery hearing on Capitol Hill. Lawmakers grilled former special counsel Robert Hur about his investigation into Biden's handling of classified documents. You remember Hur's report was released last month. He decided not to charge the president with a crime. But it's this part of Hur's report that's also drawn scrutiny from lawmakers, where he described Biden as an elderly man with a poor memory. Today, Hur stood by that report.
My assessment in the report about the relevance of the president's memory was necessary and accurate and fair. I did not sanitize my explanation, nor did I disparage the president unfairly.
All right, let's talk a little bit more about this. I'm joined now by NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli and NBC News legal analyst Danny Cevallos. Mike, I watched most of the hearing today, as I'm sure you did. A lot of the questioning there, you can't avoid the fact, the notion that this was a lot of political theater, right? Absolutely. I mean, there were questions that were answered by the people who were asking the questions in so many cases. Talk to me about what played out there and how you saw it.
Now, this is an oversight hearing. This is Republicans wanting to move forward in their potential impeachment inquiry with President Biden. But it's appropriate that we're having this conversation now after just talking about another election night where we're going to see both Donald Trump and Joe Biden emerge as their party's nominees tonight, because this felt like a general election moment on Capitol Hill. You had Chairman Jim Jordan open his hearing with a clip of President Biden talking about the Hur report the night it was released. Then you had the top Democrat on the committee, Jerry Nadler, playing a montage of Donald Trump having issues with memory recall and some verbal miscues. And then when it came to some of the other members on both sides, they used their questions really to grill Robert Hur for the reasons why, from different ends of the spectrum, they think he failed the country by making a political report. Let's play a little bit of what we saw today.
And you're doing everything you can do to get President Trump reelected so that you can get appointed as a federal judge or perhaps to another position in the Department of Justice. Isn't that correct?
Congressman, I have no such aspirations, I can assure you, and I can tell you that partisan politics had no place whatsoever in my work.
All I have to do when I'm caught taking home classified materials to say, I'm sorry, Mr. Herbert, but I'm getting old, my memory's not so great.
Yeah, Congressman,
this is the doctrine that you've established in our laws now, and it's frightening.
Congressman, my intent is certainly not to establish any sort of doctrine.
So you have a Democrat attacking her. You have a Republican attacking her. I thought our colleague Ken Delaney, who covers the Justice Department, put it well today. As a journalist, when you're getting hit by both sides, you feel confident that you did your job right. Her, as a prosecutor, probably feels the same way, although it had to be uncomfortable for him in the hot seat today.
You have to imagine after hours and hours of the questioning there. I want to ask you, too, about this transcript of the president's interview back in October with Robert Hur. You had a chance to actually read it. You read the transcript. What were your big takeaways from that?
All 260 pages. This was a 5-hour interview that took place over 2 days. And now think about what the bombshell was when this report was released last month. The conclusion, certainly that he wasn't going to bring charges, was something the White House was happy about, but they didn't like what Hur's argument was, that he felt that Biden was an elderly man with a poor memory. He based that on some of the interview subjects that they had, including what he pointed out was that the president seemed to forget the year his own son died. When you read the full transcript, when you see the fuller context around it, it does help explain some of what was going on. The president does emerge a bit more coherent, frankly, a bit more feisty at times. There was even a lot of humor from the president during the course of this long interview. But it also does confirm what NBC News first reported, which it was, in fact, the president himself who raised the subject of his son's death, who did have a hard time placing the year in which his son died. And so it really helped, I think, to illuminate what obviously became a huge bombshell just a month ago.
Yeah, hang tight with us, Mike. Danny Cevallos, I want to bring you in here, and I want to ask you about hearing a witness versus reading a transcript. Hur was asked a few times whether he recorded the interviews that he did in his investigation. He said his recordings helped with the decision-making process for him. We know that the committee, the Congressional Committee, has requested these recordings. What do you make of that distinction? Is hearing a witness more valuable or potentially easier for a prosecutor to understand the value of that than somebody who's just reading a transcript?
Yes, hearing a witness, and even better than that, seeing a witness on video. Here's the thing. Most of us don't speak the way, say, books are written in perfect syntax. We speak in a way that when you read it in a transcript, you sometimes don't get the full message. And I read a lot of transcripts, and a lot of times I think, yeah, that's not really how it sounded. In fact, even sounds like or come across totally different to different people in a transcript. That's just a simple example of the difference between what you hear in audio and what you read in print, the way people speak. So yes, there's certainly more value and you get more information from audio, and again, more even still from video. And there may have been a lot of context in that audio. Maybe it's a pause. Maybe it's a time while President Biden was thinking of an answer that was telling to an investigator or her himself. So yes, you get a lot more information. Humans are amazing truth detectors. We have natural software built into us. That's why we have a jury system. We trust in lay people, often lay people that know nothing at all about a high-profile case that they're sitting on a jury, and yet our system trusts in our natural abilities to assess credibility. That is literally an instruction that we give jurors, and jurors are in the room in real time watching and listening to a witness. So yes, there is a lot you get from audio that you simply don't get from a transcript.
You know, from a lawyer's perspective, Danny, what was the value of today? Having a prosecutor come before lawmakers and answer questions about his work, did that serve him in any way now as a private citizen?
Now you're getting into the realm of the great Mike Memoli, because frankly, from a legal perspective, there was very little. There were times, maybe my favorite moment of the day is when one lawmaker asked her to read from his own report, and her practically said, you know, I'd rather you read it. I mean, I wrote it. I know what it says. If I'm just here to read, you don't really need me here. And I'm paraphrasing, but I really felt for her in that moment. I don't even remember who asked the question. The point is, he wrote a report. He came back and said many times, well, as I said in my report. In terms of the legal analysis, it's really interesting because this is an area that most criminal defense attorneys never see, because for the most part, criminal defendants don't sit down and give wide-ranging interviews to prosecutors, and rarely do, I have to admit, it is true that rarely does a prosecutor say, well, boy, this bank robber, he says he doesn't remember it. And, you know, if he doesn't remember it, maybe we don't go forward. Now, I'm using a ridiculous example. This is obviously totally different. But, you know, look, I was impressed with her candor. And, you know, Mike Memoli stole the words out of my mouth that I wanted to say, which I just thought about all day, which was that if they're coming at you from both sides as a prosecutor, you're doing something right.
I owe you one, Danny.
All right, gentlemen, we will leave it there. We ran out of time here. Mike Memoli, Danny Savalos, appreciate it. Thank you. Well, TikTok takes on Washington just as a bill is barreling forward in the House that could ban the social media giant. Some of its biggest stars made their way to Capitol Hill to let lawmakers know how they feel. NBC News Now anchor Savannah Sellers has more.
Hey, Aaron, I'm here on Capitol Hill where we have just found out this vote is scheduled for 10 a.m. tomorrow morning. Now, the lead sponsors of this bill tell me they are cautiously optimistic they have the votes they need. And that's a pretty big deal because this is not just a simple majority. They actually need 2/3 in order for this bill to advance. Representative Gallagher is one of those lead sponsors, and I was able to talk with him today on the Hill. Now, you'll remember one of the details here. The big thing is they are saying it is not just a ban. It is an option for TikTok to get away, separate from its Chinese parent company, ByteDance. They're saying that they have 6 months to do so for ByteDance to divest this company. I asked Representative Gallagher, though, what if TikTok said, fine, we'll do it, but we need 12 months because 6 months, TikTok says, is too quick of a turnaround, even if they were interested or even if they did have a buyer. They basically said, no, it's 6 months, that's it, or otherwise this will face a ban in the United States. Now, I have also been talking to creators on the Hill today, TikTokers, the people who are making those videos, some of them with millions of followers. They say this will decimate their small businesses. They say that they feel this is an infringement on their free speech. They even say it's like losing the American dream in some cases. So they are not happy about this. TikTok flew them in to actually come here and speak with lawmakers face to face. But tomorrow morning we will find out if this advances to the Senate. Now, in the Senate, it could have a tougher uphill battle. There we have heard senators express some skepticism that it's a very good idea to mess with an app that 170 million Americans love, especially in an election year. Aaron, back to you.
Savannah Sellers for us on Capitol Hill. Well, don't go anywhere. We are just getting started here. Up next, Haiti's prime minister is stepping down as gang violence rocks his country. So what happens now? Plus, ever wonder why deodorant and toothpaste are locked behind glass in some stores? Retail theft is getting out of control. CNBC got special access to see these crimes from law enforcement's point of view. And women are shattering glass ceilings every single day, even leading some of the biggest companies in the world. So why are they only being paid 84 cents for every dollar a man earns? We're taking a closer look on this equal pay day.
traditional women's jobs tend to be on the lower end of pay. So we just want them to know that they are capable and that they are worthy of making the same amount of money that these men do.
Welcome back. Let's take a quick look around the world. Without more aid, Ukraine is facing the prospect of more and more losses on the battlefield. That's the word coming from U.S. intelligence officials, including CIA Director William Burns. The Senate recently approved a $60 billion security assistance bill for Ukraine, but it remains stuck in the House. Today, the Biden administration did just say it is sending over $300 million worth of weapons. The UN Secretary General wants Sudan's warring parties to put down their arms for Ramadan, with a warning that the nearly year-long conflict could soon threaten stability in that region. Fighting broke out there last April after tensions between Sudan's military and its paramilitary group led to an all-out urban warfare. The government in India has enacted a controversial citizenship law that critics say discriminates against Muslims. The law allows for Hindus, Sikhs, Buddhists, and Christians and others who come into India from neighboring countries before a certain date to quickly gain Indian nationality, but not Muslims. A Russian military plane crashed shortly after takeoff today with 15 people on board. Right now, Russia is not saying whether anybody survived. It also said that an engine fire during takeoff most likely caused that crash. Well, after weeks of gang violence, prison breaks, attacks on hospitals and airports, the Prime Minister of Haiti is resigning. Now, to understand this crisis, we have to go back a little bit in time here to July of 2021. Ariel Henry was chosen as Prime Minister by then-President Jovenel Moïse. But within days of that announcement, Moïse was killed in his home. Moïse had been fighting to stay in power. He was being accused of corruption at the time of his death. Now, after the assassination, Haiti descended further into chaos. Henry eventually became the prime minister, promising fair presidential elections so that the people could choose their leader. But that never happened. Henry has been the acting prime minister and president ever since. He used a rise in crime and a severe earthquake as an explanation for not having the elections. A lot of people got tired of waiting there. In February of this year, protesters called for Henry's resignation, and gang violence exploded, sending that country into a state of emergency. And one of Haiti's most notorious gang leaders threatened more violence if Henry didn't resign. So, now that he has, what happens next? NBC News correspondent Gadi Venegas joins us now from Miami. So, Gadi, you've been watching this. When does this resignation actually go into effect? And then what happens after that? Who takes over next?
Aaron, what we know from the Prime Minister himself is that as soon as there's a coalition council formed, which we understand that is happening right now, he will resign and turn over power. So yesterday, leaders of various nations in the Caribbean met with Anthony Blinken, representing the United States, as well as representatives from Mexico and for France, and they designed a plan. They proposed this change of this new presidential council. After that, we heard by a video that the Prime Minister shared on social media, a video where he was telling the country that he would be stepping down. Now, he's asked Haitians to remain calm, so we expect this transfer of power to happen any moment. Now, what we know about that presidential council is that it's going to be formed by 9 individuals, 2 that will be observers and 7 that will be voting. Among those 7, there's people representing the political parties in Haiti, as well as the business community, civil society, and a religious leader. The first step that they will be taking is to choose a new prime minister, an interim prime minister that would then lead the country and finally hold elections. But of course, all of this will have to happen while the country has been undergoing this escalation in violence. So it's going to depend on how these gangs react in order for anything to happen in Haiti.
So, and that is the big question here, right? We've got this call for calm, but the violence that's been happening to this point, there are some gangs in Haiti that are saying all they want is free and fair elections there, and they're using that idea to justify some of the violence. I want to play a little bit of sound for our audience here, and then I'll ask you about it on the other side.
We're not in a peaceful revolution. We're making a bloody revolution in the country because this system is an apartheid system, a wicked system. It's the inhabitants of the working class districts and the Haitian people who know what they're suffering at the moment. And it's up to them to choose the person who's going to lead them.
So even if somebody new does come into power in Haiti, Guad, with 80% of that country overrun by gangs now, is there a real expectation of order and stability in Haiti?
So, Aaron, the challenge for the new prime minister, which will be selected, is to be able to hold elections in a country where the capital is mostly controlled by the gangs and dealing with all of these security threats. Just days ago, there was a break into the largest prison where a lot of the gang members were able to escape. They've attacked police stations. We know that the national police has been overwhelmed. So it seems like it would be impossible to hold elections. Now, the gangs say they want to see elections. So depending on who is selected to be that interim prime minister and what the gangs want to do, that will really decide what will happen in the near future in Haiti.
All right, Guad Venegas for us in Miami. Guad, thank you. More aid is on its way to Gaza. Today, a ship carrying 200 tons of food left Cyprus. Now, it's expected to reach Gaza in just a couple of days. The World Central Kitchen is the organization behind this operation. That organization is run by famous chef Jose Andres. Now, in the meantime, the U.S. has been dropping more aid into Gaza as well. With help from the Jordanian government, the U.S. dropped more than 5,000 pounds of flour, rice, and canned goods into northern Gaza today. NBC News International correspondent Raf Sanchez has the latest developments on the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
After several days of delay, that Spanish aid ship, the Open Arms, has now set sail from Cyprus heading to Gaza, but it is going to be a painfully slow voyage. The ship is dragging a barge behind it with some 200 tons of food and humanitarian supplies, much of it supplied by the American charity World Central Kitchen. But that really reduces the speed of this ship. It's going to be traveling at around 3 miles an hour. That means it may take up to 3 days to reach Gaza, and it remains very unclear once it reaches the coast of the Strip, how do you actually get that aid onto the land, and how do you distribute it safely to the people who need it most? Remember, the UN is warning more than 500,000 people in northern Gaza are on the brink of famine right now, and they are saying that this aid coming in by sea really is not a substitute for the timely and large-scale delivery of aid by land through Israel, through Egypt. They say what they need is a direct land route into northern Gaza. Now, the Israeli government has said it is prepared to open a new crossing into northern Gaza, but it remains unclear when that will be operational and how much aid can get through it. Meanwhile, there is this longer-term plan, as set out by President Biden at the State of the Union, for the U.S. military to build a temporary pier off the coast of Gaza to really try to ramp up the scale of aid getting in. But U.S. officials tell NBC News that is going to take more than 2 months, potentially, to get up and running. And the UN is warning people are on the brink of famine in Gaza right now.
Raf Sanchez for us in Israel tonight. Raf, thank you. Coming up, after a door plug blew off a Boeing plane mid-flight, the FAA spent more than a month looking into that plane model. And, well, it found dozens of problems there. We're going to explain that for you. First, though, you got to see this. This elephant family just got a little bit bigger. Look at that guy. 265-pound baby elephant was born last Friday at Reed Park Zoo in Tucson, Arizona. This is the third elephant born at that zoo. We actually don't know whether it's a boy or a girl at this point. The birth comes after recent health complications with the mother elephant there. Both mom and baby are getting 24-hour monitoring. Apparently they're doing great. Up on feet, its feet. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. Welcome back. We're going to get into homelessness and whether cities can punish people sleeping on public land. Liz Kreutz has some great reporting on that. First, though, some of the stories happening out west tonight. The Lakers say they are working to fix spelling errors with an S on the new Kobe Bryant Memorial. The typos were found on a plaque at the base of that 19-foot bronze statue. Several players' names were misspelled, along with the word decision. The statue was unveiled in Los Angeles last month outside the team's arena. Last night, crews responded to a brush fire in Isleta Pueblo land south of Albuquerque, New Mexico. The Valencia County Fire Department says crews were able to keep that fire from spreading to nearby cities. And some disappointing news from California's Big Bear Valley. Internet-famous bald eagle duo Jackie and Shadow, they probably won't have any baby eagles. The pair had 3 eggs, but they are all past their incubation period. Fans have been waiting weeks for the first few cracks in the eggs there, a sign that they're about to hatch. Friends of Big Bear Valley, the organization running the live stream that so many of us have been watching, they said it doesn't, they don't know if the eggs are going to hatch, but you know, miracles happen. Well, we are about a month away from the start of a landmark Supreme Court case that could set the standard for how cities respond to homelessness. Specifically, whether cities can punish people for sleeping on public land when they have nowhere else to go. Now, at the center of the case is a rural city called Grants Pass, Oregon. It's a population of about 40,000 people or less, actually. An appeals court ruled that Grants Pass violated the 8th Amendment, the part about cruel and unusual punishment. And it did that by enacting anti-camping laws, which fine people for sleeping in public spaces. Now, interestingly enough here, a number of Democratic lawmakers seem to be taking the conservative side of this issue, and they want the Supreme Court to do the same. For this NBC News investigation, Liz Kreutz spoke to people on all sides of this issue and joins us now. And Liz, so we set the politics part of this aside for a second. We're talking about real people's real lives. I know you spoke to a woman who used to be unhoused, who still has, what, $6,000 in fines from the years she spent living in a tent. What'd you learn from her?
Yeah, so Aaron, this woman's name is Helen Cruz. She was homeless for 5 years in Grants Pass. She no longer is homeless. She now lives in a church across the street from where she once pitched her tent. But to this day, as she's starting to get back on her feet, she says she still has between $6,000 to $8,000 in unpaid fines. And these are fines from tickets she received while she was homeless from sleeping in a tent. And I'll just let her speak in her own words. Here's what she told us.
What's it like to be homeless in Grants Pass?
It's a nightmare. It is an absolute nightmare. They're saying because we don't have that white picket fence that we're not allowed to live, because we don't have a big, huge house and we don't have any place to go, that they would rather put us in jail, give us fines, give us tickets, harass us, keep us moving around and around and around to parks with no solution because there's no housing.
Now, Grants Pass is a city that's almost doubled in population over the past 20 years. And as people moved in, housing prices went up and people like Helen got pushed out onto the streets. They literally have nowhere else to go. There is no full-time, low-barrier homeless shelter in the city of Grants Pass. And that is the crux of the argument that Helen and other homeless residents are making when they say it's violating their constitutional rights, cruel and unusual punishment. They say these anti-camping ordinances being fined are violating their rights since they simply have nowhere else to go.
So you laid the foundation for us here, Liz. Talk to us about how this ended up at the Supreme Court and then what this could mean for cities all over the country.
Yeah, so I mean, in many ways, Grants Pass is a microcosm for cities big and small across the country that are dealing with this same issue, the growing homelessness population, and also a lot of frustration from voters who are frustrated by it and want to see their streets cleaned up. And so what happened is these homeless residents petitioned, they sued the city of Grants Pass, saying it violated their constitutional rights. It's been a legal battle that's dragged on for years. Most recently, the 9th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals ruled on behalf of homeless residents, saying that it did indeed violate the Constitution. Grants Pass appealed, and now the Supreme Court has taken up this case. And you're seeing Democratic lawmakers, like you mentioned, Governor Gavin Newsom is one of them here in California, where I am, and other Democratic leaders in Democratic cities saying that they're siding with Grants Pass, too, because they argue that laws like this, banning anti-camping ordinances, are tying their hands, in their words, paralyzing them, preventing them from cleaning up their streets. On the flip side, you have homeless residents and advocates that are saying that, that's not the way to solve the problem. The way to solve the problem is to add more housing and to help these folks. And by pushing them off the street, you're not solving the problem. They have to go somewhere. So it's not actually getting to the root of the issue.
A very complex issue. We'll see how the Supreme Court eventually comes down on this. Liz Kreutz for us tonight. Thank you, Liz. And still to come, some of your favorite stores are dealing with an insane amount of organized crime. CNBC got inside access with law enforcement to see what's going on firsthand. We'll show you next, so stay tuned. Welcome back. Here are some of the other headlines we're watching for you tonight. A measles outbreak is growing in Chicago. 3 more cases found at a migrant shelter this week. The city's health department says that makes 8 cases this year. Now the CDC is sending a team to check things out. The cases are the first in Chicago since 2019. Gender identity can now be discussed again in Florida classrooms. This is part of a new settlement between education officials and civil rights attorneys over the state's so-called Don't Say Gay law. The agreement clarifies the topic cannot be part of instruction. Airbnb is banning indoor security cameras for properties listed on its site. The platform made that decision over privacy concerns. They used to allow cameras in common areas, hallways, living rooms, things like that, as long as they were disclosed. Airbnb also revising rules over outdoor security cameras. Consumer prices climbed last month as the inflation rate is still between 3% and 4%. That's just above the Federal Reserve's target of 2%. Basically meaning that inflation is still high and hanging around for longer than we thought. NASA's SpaceX crew is back on Earth after spending almost 6 months at the International Space Station. The 4-person crew splashed down off the coast of Florida today. The next NASA mission to the ISS set to be the first human flight for Boeing's Starliner capsule. That was tentatively scheduled to launch next month, but has now been pushed back to May. Well, tonight, a former Boeing whistleblower is dead. His name was John Barnett. Officials say his death appears to be from a self-inflicted gunshot. He was 62 years old. Now, Barnett went public several years ago with concerns about safety issues at the company's factory in South Carolina. That's where they make the Boeing 787 Dreamliner. That is the same plane that had a midair drop during a flight from Australia to New Zealand yesterday. Dozens of people injured there. NBC News senior correspondent Tom Costello has more.
The focus for investigators, that terrifying nosedive off New Zealand that injured dozens. Passengers say the LATAM pilot claimed he suddenly lost control of the Boeing 787 when the flight data computers went dark. In 2016, the FAA issued an airworthiness directive for the 787, warning that if the flight control computers are not reset every 22 days, they could shut themselves down, which could result in flight controls that don't respond and a temporary loss of controllability.
Investigators will look at whether the airplane was completely depowered at one point in the last 3 weeks.
Meanwhile, 2 months since that mid-air MAX 9 emergency, sources close to the investigation say Boeing has failed 33 of 89 FAA audits. The FAA confirming it identified non-compliance issues in Boeing's manufacturing process control, parts handling and storage, and product control.
If we see something that requires us to cease production or pull something down, we'll do that.
In an email, Boeing's chief of commercial planes today called on every employee to precisely follow every step of our manufacturing procedures and processes. While in South Carolina, a coroner says former Boeing whistleblower John Barnett took his own life before his upcoming trial against the company. In 2019, Barnett told NBC News Boeing was putting profits ahead of safety.
From day one, it's just all been about schedule and hurry up and just get it done, push the planes out.
In a statement, Boeing says we are saddened by Mr. Barnett's passing and our thoughts are with his family and friends.
So we want to turn now to what really is a desperate search for a University of Missouri student who's been missing for days now. Nashville police sharing this new video showing the last moments Riley Strain is believed to have been seen in public. The 22-year-old senior disappeared Friday night while on a fraternity trip. NBC News correspondent Kathy Park has been following this search effort closely. She's joining us now from Knoxville. So, Kathy, what do we know about what happened the night that Riley went missing and then the latest on the investigation here?
Aaron, good evening. As you mentioned, it's been several days since Riley was reported missing, and unfortunately still no sign of him. Nashville police, they've been actively searching on the ground. They also use aerial units to search for him. They also combed the riverbank as well. But you're taking a look at surveillance footage that was released earlier today, and the timestamp on this was 9:47 p.m. Friday night. This was shortly after he left a downtown Nashville bar, and his stepfather was actually telling us that he left the bar and was intended to go to the hotel, but he never made it there. He was in the Nashville area visiting with his fraternity, Delta Chi, and obviously a terrible turn of events because when they didn't see him in the hotel, they quickly came together and began searching for him, but they came up short, and the search is intensifying, Aaron.
Yeah, I know this has to be really tough for his family, for his parents. What are they saying at this point?
So I spoke with Riley's stepfather not too long ago, and obviously the family is extremely distraught. They're emotional, but they remain hopeful that they will bring Riley home and he will graduate in May. In fact, the family, they got into their car. They drove from Springfield, Missouri to Nashville the minute they learned Riley was missing. And then once they got to Nashville, they began their own search efforts as well. I was told, this is a photo of him that you're looking at right now. He is a pretty large young man. He stands at 6'7", so he is large in stature, but he also has a very big personality. I was told that he is very close to his family. He actually talks to his mom about 4 to 5 times a day. So on Friday evening, when he was in Nashville, he actually FaceTimed his mother when he was at the bar. It was early in the night, but he was showing her that he was having a good time. So when the family didn't hear from him early Saturday morning, they knew something was wrong. Take a listen.
We've heard multiple stories from multiple different people about people being drugged, kidnapped, and let loose 3, 4, 5 days later. They've just been robbed of their phones, their wallets and stuff. We still strongly feel that Riley will be going home with us. We're still planning that he's going to graduate. We're hurting and everything, but right now we are still expecting a positive outcome.
And Aaron, we also learned that during the family's search efforts over the weekend, they were speaking with members of the homeless population in that area, and they ran into one person. When they saw a photo of Riley, he immediately said Larry Bird, referencing the famous basketball player. As I mentioned, he is a pretty tall young man, 6'7". So these family members, Riley's family, they're kind of holding on to clues like that, but they're also standing by for additional information. They're told from authorities that will be released from surveillance footage in that area as well. Aaron?
We are all hoping for the best outcome here. Kathy Park for us in Knoxville, Tennessee tonight. Kathy, thank you. Well, police across the country are cracking down on organized crime rings that target some of your favorite stores. In a CNBC exclusive, we go inside the criminal police investigations that target the thieves who set up these thriving businesses to steal and sell online. CNBC senior retail reporter Courtney Reagan has more on the investigation into selling stolen.
It's a chilly, clear morning in the picturesque foothills of San Diego County as we head to a suspected crime scene. A convoy of law enforcement vehicles is about to descend on an unlikely place, a mansion complete with its own vineyard and chapel, rented out as a wedding venue and Airbnb. Police believe it's also the headquarters for a lucrative theft ring, where items stolen from Ulta Beauty Supply and other retailers are being resold on Amazon. As we pull up, authorities tell us they have the suspected ringleader in handcuffs.
What are we looking for? There they are, right there.
And it's happening everywhere. For months, we got exclusive access to the California Highway Patrol, watching up close how it fights organized retail crime, which, including external theft, totaled $40.5 billion in the U.S., according to the National Retail Federation's most recent estimate. On another day, in another California city, we see more truckloads of what police say is stolen clothing, mostly from TJ Maxx.
We have a search warrant for the resident. Come on with your hands up now.
I think people feel like it's hopeless. I want the retailers and the victims of this to know that that's not true.
Hands on your head.
Retailers specifically pointing to theft as a growing problem in recent years include Target, Foot Locker, Walgreens, and Ulta. But few quantify the impact or offer many details, raising questions in the industry about whether retailers are using the attention around theft to cover their own operational missteps. At the mansion, the woman in custody is Michelle Mack. According to the search warrant, she's in charge, giving a group of 12 women across the country a list of retail stores to target, along with the retail merchandise. Those Ulta Beauty products then ending up on an Amazon digital storefront called the Online Makeup Store at deep discounts. The search warrant alleges Mac has sold nearly $8 million worth of merchandise on the platform since 2012. The next morning, a team from Ulta unloads the haul along with CHP officers, sorting and carefully organizing everything. Most of it, $387,000 in stolen items from Ulta, according to authorities, but also some items from Sephora, Victoria's Secret, Bath & Body Works, Sunglass Hut, and LensCrafters. And these boxes of manila envelopes, they were being mailed to customers who ordered from the online makeup store who now aren't getting anything. Like Donna Washburn, who says she bought her daughter a $42 makeup item for Christmas. Did it ever occur to you that buying a product off of Amazon, you could be buying a product that was stolen?
No, never. You put in the trust in a store like that they're checking these things.
As for Michelle Mack, California Attorney General Rob Bonta announced she and her husband Kenneth are facing charges of conspiracy, grand theft, and receipt of stolen property. The Macks have pled not guilty.
This Amazon marketplace site called the Online Makeup Store that was selling the stolen goods year after year.
We asked Lisa Labruno, Senior Executive Vice President of the Retail Industry Leaders Association, how this could happen. So if you're Amazon, should you have had some kind of an algorithm that flagged it?
This is not just about Amazon. There's other online marketplaces who serve as fences for the sale of stolen product. But I don't see the online marketplaces raising their hand and saying, we acknowledge that this is dirty money.
Retail CEOs have been largely mum about organized retail crime, but Ulta Beauty CEO Dave Kimball spoke to us in an exclusive interview about the issue.
We're absolutely fed up with it. I mean, it's impacting the experience that we work so hard to deliver for our team. These situations, they're not fun. They're threatening, they're intimidating, they can be traumatic.
What do you think in this case, as we're speaking of in California, that Amazon could have done to know that these were stolen goods?
What I would say more broadly is there is technology available. There's use of advanced analytics and data capabilities to try to understand behaviors that are indicative of reselling stolen goods.
Are you shocked by the sheer volume that one ring could have been doing over more than a decade?
Unfortunately, I'm not that shocked because we've seen it in other parts of the country. And the magnitude of this one is significant. I do believe that the marketplaces and online distribution of stolen goods is part of the problem. This is not some individual that bought too many lipsticks and they want to resell it.
Amazon declined an on-camera interview, but told us it was, quote, untrue that the company is profiting from the sale of stolen goods. A spokesperson said we invest more than $1 billion annually and employ thousands of people to fight fraud. The company added that it uses sophisticated detection and prevention solutions, allowing us to quickly spot a range of organized retail crime schemes. Amazon acknowledged in this case, we did not receive signals to identify the seller was engaged in selling stolen goods. As far as TJ Maxx, the company tells us it's taking strong measures to fight organized retail crime. For more on our story, go to CNBC.com. Courtney Reagan, CNBC.
Well, before we go, over the course of your career, what if I told you that you would lose out on $400,000? Well, apparently that's how much less women are earning compared to men. On this Equal Pay Day, we are going to introduce you to a group of women in West Virginia working hard to earn their fair share. That's coming up, so stay tuned. Well, now for the future of everything. Tonight, we are diving into the world of edited content, like that royal photo making headlines this week overseas. Our friends at Sky News explain how media organizations caught some inconsistencies.
As soon as the news broke, social media erupted with scrutiny over the cuff of Charlotte's cardigan, speculation about a misaligned royal zipper. So what's happened? Well, pictures can be manipulated, but modern cameras don't lie if you can access the metadata embedded in the image file, which we did. So this is the original image file sent to media organisations like ours by Kensington Palace, and this is the metadata that was embedded in it, and it tells us quite a lot. The fact it was taken on a professional Canon camera, where it was taken, Adelaide Cottage, no surprises, that's where William and Kate live, but it also reveals that it was opened and saved twice in Adobe Photoshop. That's photo editing software.
Well, there is a really dark side to all of this as well. We've seen recent examples of fake nude photos with faces of underage celebrities. A lot of it is already illegal, not to mention how deep fakes are being used as a tool for political and warfare misinformation. So how do we know if what we click on is real? Are there ways to stop it at its source? CNBC's Mackenzie Sigalos is at the South by Southwest in Austin, Texas, where this has been a really big talker, Mackenzie, the talk of the tech world. What are some of the tools being discussed by developers and by big companies that are working against this type of AI?
So that deepfake of Kate Middleton that's been making the rounds this week has actually been a big talker at South by Southwest because the people here are building brand new tools to combat that kind of misinformation. Right now, there are essentially two main ways to fight deepfakes, and they aren't really working well. You can watermark photos and videos, but that can be removed. Option two, there are technologies out there that try to detect if a photo or video is AI generated, but it's a losing battle. Even if you look at some of the military projects for detecting AI generated images, they're rarely effective because it's hard to keep up. So enter Web3. And I know this sounds like such a buzzword of the 2021 era, but what I'm hearing in Austin right now is that blockchains are a game changer for fighting deepfakes. I spoke to the founder of a new app called Click that's trying to fix this problem at the point of origin. So you use this app to take a picture or video, and it automatically imprints onto the blockchain with core metadata baked into it. Here's what he had to say.
Blockchain is the only way to make a record that is immutable and is going to prove the time at which this photo has been taken or video, and also to help you prove the location and other elements that are going to reinforce that proof.
It's worth noting that Sony and Canon are already using these kind of digital signatures on their photos and videos, but the system that they're using isn't decentralized. So doing this on the blockchain is apparently much more secure than using a centralized certificate-based system, in part because it's less prone to hacks or censorship.
So it's nice to know you've got folks like Sony and big companies that are trying to address this and work on some of these issues. But we talk about this dark side to deep fake and what ends up online, right? Is there a way to stop that before it's posted?
Yeah, it's a great question, especially in a banner election year where 2 billion voters are headed to the polls in 50 countries. President Biden's team actually put out a statement last month saying that they want to cryptographically sign all content coming from the White House. And we're not just talking about images and videos. We're also talking about documents, because deep faking press statements is definitely a thing. Adidas and Walmart have fallen victim to this. Sometimes it moves markets. Click tells me that they're building a tool for enterprise clients and political campaigns that allows you to drag and drop a PDF document into the app so that it has that cryptographic verification. So another cool application here, Aaron.
All right, just a lot to keep up with. We appreciate your reporting on this. CNBC's Mackenzie Sigalos. Mackenzie, thank you. Well, right now, in 2024, women, on average, earn 84 cents of every dollar a man earns. But instead of waiting for change, a West Virginia nonprofit is taking matters into its own hands. On this Equal Pay Day, NBC's Maura Barrett introduces us to some women who are closing the gap.
In Fairmont, West Virginia, a new cohort is breaking ground in the gender pay gap. Lifted up by the nonprofit West Virginia Women Work, they're completing a pre-apprenticeship program to open doors towards trade work, trained by a graduate of the same program, Keisha Hines.
Ease up on it, slow. Traditional women's jobs tend to be on the lower end of pay. So we just want them to know that they are capable and that they are worthy of making the same amount of money that these men do.
As part of the program, the students do all of their practical and clinical hours to walk away with a forklift certification. And that's just in week 1.
The 12-week construction program is funded by grants and donations, so it's free for students and provides hands-on training in electric, welding, and masonry, plus certifications for construction safety, plumbing, and HVAC work.
All right, how did that feel?
Empowering. The women in this class and the program's first trans man come from various backgrounds. Ariel West is a single mom.
Single moms don't have the time, the resources. They aren't able to expend themselves as a single father is.
And Skylar Palmer has always been intrigued by construction, but was recently denied a promotion to work the forklift at her job.
They just told me that I couldn't do it because I was a woman. It was just something that they have in their eyesights, and
was that surprising to hear?
Pretty much. I mean, I feel like women should have equal rights.
But the students have a similar goal, gaining independence.
I really want to prove people wrong because growing up, kind of had a lot of things against me. So I feel like this is my way of showing that I can do everything that everybody else can do.
West Virginia's pay gap is one of the largest in the country, with women making just 77 cents for every dollar a man makes. But women here face the same barriers as others nationally.
One of the big factors behind this wage gap is that women and men tend to work in different occupations. We know that women are more likely to look after kids or family when it's needed.
Graduates of the program see their wages double or even triple on average. And with projections for more than 500,000 openings in trade jobs nationally, the opportunity for success is endless. Success like what Allison Dempsey saw. She finished the program in 2019 and is now the manager of project planning at the state's largest solar energy company.
It's an untapped market for women, and it's an opportunity just waiting to happen. It gives you the confidence to walk into a situation that is predominantly male and is construction oriented and feel like you belong there.
I mean, what about the people who say that's a man's job?
Don't listen to them. A man can raise children the same as a woman can, and a woman can build a home. Like literally build a home, not just from the inside, but from the outside up.
In addition to the pay bump and networking, the unexpected byproduct of confidence.
And I'm able to support my son, and I'm able to take us places. We can actually enjoy life and spend time together and make memories because I have financial stability and independence.
As long as we are trained and we know what we're doing, we can do anything. You want it, you can do it.
Right now, women make up just 4% of the workers in the construction industry. But as we're seeing new investments in infrastructure expansion, clean energy projects, and manufacturing capacity, policy experts point out the potential in the fact that there could be more training and recruitment for female workers, as well as federal and state accountability programs for those publicly funded jobs. Back to you.
Our thanks to Maura Barrett for that. And that does it for us tonight. I'm Aaron Gilchrist. We'll see you tomorrow. But until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.